once we can create immersive digital environments that are fully immersive, that are just as real as our everyday matrix that we have to share with others, those digital environments can be just for us. So we can each become God in our own custom-made digital universe.
Hi, I'm Zach Weissmuller for Reason TV. We're here in New York City at the Tribeca Film Festival. I'm with Jason Silva. He's a filmmaker, host of Nat Geo's Brain Games, and a self-described techno optimist. Are you still a techno optimist? There's been a lot of techno pessimism in the wake of, all the Snowden revelations, the government harnessing technology to spy on all of us. Can you make us feel better about it all?
Yes, well look, people have always been afraid of disruptive technologies that signal transformation, that signal change, that signal the world operating under a different set of parameters, but when we invented the alphabet, writing, Socrates, Plato, all the intellects of the day used to say that if you wrote things down, it was going to atrophy your brain because you weren't going to have to remember anything. So we've always been terrified. Smartphones, people are like, oh, we're looking up everything on Google so we don't retain any information. It's not true. It's just, these are technology. I always say this, technology is our exoskeleton. I phone, therefore I am. But as Kevin Kelly says, as long as our sphere of possibilities is enhanced, then there's a net gain. It's not utopia, but it's kind of leaning that way. The world has never been less violent. A young person in Africa with a cell phone has better communications technology than the US president had 25 years ago. So, I think we're doing better, but yeah, it's a double-edged sword. You can use the technology of fire to burn people, or you can use it to cook your food. We talked about this 3 years ago.
So, but do you worry about the way that it has been used by the state to surveil people?
I think that what people have to realize is that I don't envision a bunch of agents sitting around spying on you and caring like what you're Googling about. I think it's software algorithms. They're looking for patterns in the data because there's billions of people that are surfing the internet at any given time. That's more than any cognitive brains could ever keep track of if they're like spying on your personal web surfing habits. No, they're algorithms that are looking for patterns, that are looking for people who are trying to do bad things, like blow shit up. If you're emailing people about blowing shit up, then it should show up on a pattern recognition engine that the NSA is using, and you should be questioned, Like, we need to have some kind of compromise to live inside of a sort of consensus society where we agree that you're not supposed to hurt other people and so on and so forth. Now, I'm all about free speech, but again, there are key words, there are key terms, there are key things that if people are actively talking about, it raises some flags, and I can understand where that's coming from. So I'm not an alarmist about it, because again, I'm not up to bad things. So.
Well, David Brin wrote a book called The Transparent Society, and he talks about this concept of surveillance, where yes, the government's looking down on us, but it's a two-way road where we can look at them.
100%.
Do you envision that kind of totally transparent society moving forward, or how do you think that's going to play out?
Well, the whole idea of privacy is a cultural invention, right? I mean, there was a time when the tribe and the village and everybody knew everything about everybody. The whole privacy thing emerged kind of out of the new, industrial revolution, socioeconomic models, buy a house, have a private room, private living room. These are things that we got to take for granted, but they're not necessarily set in stone. But, yes, I guess, yeah. They can watch us and we can watch them, and together that creates a decentralized system. And again, Stephen Johnson talks about this in Future Perfect. Decentralized networks that, that can regulate each other. You don't have top down, you just have what is it? It's how airplanes work. The pilot watches the autopilot watching the pilot. Do you know what I mean? So it's like that. The people watch the government, watch the people, watch the government.
So you host a show on Nat Geo called Brain Games. Great show. It's in its 3rd season, so congratulations.
Thank you, buddy.
What can we learn about the brain based on, kind of having fun, these games? What do they teach us about the brain?
Well, I think, with Brain Games, we tell people that one of the main ideas is that, perception is tightly coupled to reality. And as Joseph Campbell used to say, reality is a word you can't use without quotation marks around it. Okay. We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And I think through the games, these are like entertaining, funny, fun ways that we do on Brain Games. We create these experiments that allow people to, in a non-terrifying way, be reminded of how little they perceive of their everyday reality. And so it is through the prism of our brain making edits and guesstimating and filling in the blanks that we create the matrix of first-person subjective experience, which is highly limited. And I think on Brain Games we make people aware of that.
So you talked earlier about, living in a kind of consensus world.
Yeah.
How do we come to that consensus if we're all looking through this subjective prism?
Yeah, well, I think that's why people like Terence McKenna talked about our cultural operating systems, these reality tunnels. Robert Anton Wilson says we had to agree on a congruent set of symbols, on an approximation of a consensus sort of trends, because it's all a construct, it's all grids, it's all made up, it's all a manufactured dream space. Like we draw that line and we say cars go on that side and the other car goes on that side. The right way to go is on the right side. It's an artificial construct, but we need to come up with a consensus trend so we don't crash into each other. We need to come up with a consensus trend so we don't kill each other. Any kind of cooperation requires creating this grid, this shared dream space. Love is a cosmology shaped like a heart. Love is a shared dream space technology. Sports, another shared dream space technology. An artificial reality that we can all agree on so we can get something done. So anytime that human beings collaborate, they have to create a consensus trance, but it doesn't mean that it's set in stone. It's not fixed. These are malleable. And as is all of reality.
And do you feel like technology allows more malleability and more individualization of these dream spaces?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Well, the whole point is with virtual reality, with technologies like Oculus Rift offering a glimpse of what's coming. Terence McKenna was saying this 20 years ago, when he was high on psychedelic mushrooms, but he was saying virtual reality is increasingly leading us towards universes of our own construction. Because once we can create immersive digital environments that are fully immersive, that are just as real as our everyday matrix that we have to share with others, those digital environments can be just for us. So we can each become God in our own custom-made digital universe. We don't have to have a consensus trance anymore. It can be literally our dream just for us. We are the star of our own movie. So that's, I think, what people are excited about.
Jason Silva, host of Nat Geo's Brain Games. You can also see his videos online, Shots of Awe, it's called on YouTube.
Ruby.
Thanks very much for talking to us.
Nice to see you again, dude.
For Reason TV, I'm Zach Weissmuller.